Today I'm going to show you how to release and lengthen all 4 major hip flexor muscles. What's going on, everybody? How you doing? It's Blake Bowman here with Gorillas M Fitness, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to stretch and release all 4 major hip flexor muscles. To begin, I wanted to make this video because, when I'm in yoga class, or if I'm out and about, or if I'm in the gym, I'll hear people say all the time, oh, this stretches your hip flexor, or this is a hip flexor stretch, okay? People use this word hip flexor in the singular tense as though it's, pertaining to just one muscle, when in reality, hip flexors are a group of muscles. There are a lot of different muscles that play roles in hip flexion. Today, we're going to be talking about the 4 major ones, and I'm going to show you how to release these and stretch them all. Keep in mind, a hip flexor muscle is any muscle that aids in flexing the hip, okay? Hip flexion is this. Okay, so the muscles that I'm using right now to pull my leg up like this, those are hip flexor muscles, okay? And those are the same muscles that can become tight when you're sitting all the time, because when you're sitting, your hips are actually in a flexed position, and those hip flexor muscles shorten, okay? And that can cause an anterior pelvic tilt, where your pelvis tilts forward and your lower back arches and becomes uncomfortable all the time, okay? This is why it's important to know how to release and lengthen all 4 of the major hip flexors. We're going to get started in just a second, but I want you to know the 4 muscles specifically that we're trying to stretch. Here they are. 1 is the tensor fascia lata. 2 is the iliopsoas, which is actually a combination of 2 different muscles, the iliacus and the psoas. We're just combining them, calling it the iliopsoas. 3 is the rectus femoris. 4 is the adductor muscles. They're basically inner groin muscles. Okay, so to address all these, for a lot of them, we're going to start with foam rolling first. So you're going to need a foam roller. And the reason for this is to kind of pre-loosen up the muscle before we do static stretching and dynamic stretching, which I'll show you following. Okay? So with no further ado, let's get started. All right, so the first hip flexor muscle that we're going to work with is called the tensor fascia lata. Okay? We're just going to abbreviate that from now on with an acronym using TFL. Okay, so the TFL is located at about 45 degrees off of center. Okay, so this is the center of your hip right here. Tensor fascia lata is over here. It's kind of like a big, thick muscle that runs down the side of your hip. It's pretty easy to feel, okay, and it's probably tight on you. It's tight on a lot of people. This is the first muscle that we're going to work with. Okay, this is actually a very easy muscle to foam roll. Basically, we're going to put the foam roller down. We're going to roll on this for about 30 seconds, okay? And again, the reason why we're foam rolling first before we do any static stretching is to kind of pre-loosen up the muscle. You'll get more of a release from the stretch if it follows foam rolling. Basically, to get this, you take that 45-degree, angled muscle right here, and you just put it straight down on the foam roller. So you actually want I'm going to demonstrate it the other side because I have a mic over here. You actually want your hips kind of angled at 45 degrees too. So you don't want to be like straight down like this. Turn your hips a little bit so that they're about 45 degrees, and kind of position yourself so that that roller is going right into that muscle, right? It's going to feel like intense, okay, especially if you're tight in there. Roll back and forth on that muscle. It's only about 4 inches long, okay, so you're not making these big, broad, sweeping things, okay? You're keeping it kind of tight, confined to the hip area. 30 seconds on that side, 30 seconds on the other side, okay? Once you're done with that, we're going to get into the static stretch for the TFL. You can go longer than 30 seconds if you want, by the way. So for this stretch, basically, you're going to start kneeling, okay, on one leg, kneeling. Other foot's going to plant. Okay, you can put something underneath your knee here if this is bothering your knee. But to set up, you're going to squeeze the butt really hard, especially on the leg that's back. This butt cheek really squeezes hard. Your abs squeeze hard. Your arm goes overhead here, okay? And then you're going to bend away from that side while keeping the core really, really tight, while keeping the glutes really, really tight, okay? So what that's going to look like from this perspective, okay? Whatever leg's back, you're squeezing that butt cheek really hard. You're trying to keep that pelvis tucked under so it's like flat. Okay, that's really going to intensify the stretch here. Arm goes overhead, and then you're going to bend away from the hip that's in extension. So the knee that's on the ground, you're bending away from that while keeping the core and the butt tight. Okay, you might not even need to do the bend away thing. You might be like so tight in there that this is just lighting you on fire. If that's the case, then save the bending over to the side thing with the arm overhead until you're a little bit more advanced, until you've been doing this for a while. Okay. But that's basically how you do it. You're going to do that stretch following the foam rolling, which you'll have done for 30 seconds to a minute. You're going to do this stretch for 30 seconds to a minute as well. Okay, so the next muscle we're going to work with is the iliopsoas. Okay, Now, this muscle is really hard to work with because it basically attaches on your lumbar spine, your lower back. It runs forward through your guts, blends in with this other muscle called the iliacus, and then attaches on your leg bone, okay? So the iliacus and the psoas are basically one muscle, even though in some textbooks they've been classified as two muscles, the psoas and the iliacus. We're just going to call it the iliopsoas, okay? It's one muscle. This is a very hard muscle to release because only a small fraction of the muscle fibers are even accessible to manual release. The other ones are so deep inside of you that you can't even reach them, okay? Now, one thing that I really like to do, this is kind of weird, I've never seen anybody else show this, but is I'll just do some manual release with my hands or with like a Theracane or something, okay? And a Theracane is like a stick-like tool that you use for like self-massage. But what I'll do is I'll lay back, kind of get my hands like this, and I'll press it into the iliacus, okay? Which is basically, it lines the inside of your hip, your ilium, okay? And a lot of you don't even know this is a muscle. You know, this girl that I'm dating right now, I was releasing hers and she thought I was like pressing on her ovaries or something. It's basically, you guys probably don't even know it's a muscle because it's so bizarre, but I'll throw a picture on the screen right now what that looks like, and that's what you're trying to get into with this, okay? Now, I would just recommend kind of doing that for 30 seconds on each side. You're not going to get too much release, but it's really the best that you can do. Secondly, it's also a hard muscle to stretch, right? Liz Koch writes about this in her book. I think it's called the PSOAS book. It doesn't respond well to stretching. If you do stretch it, it won't really release. So one thing that you can do is you can lay on your back and basically elevate your feet on something. Okay, you probably want your feet even higher, maybe like a bed, where you can just like rest your legs on the bed and totally relax here. She calls this constructive rest position. And basically what this is it just gives the psoas a chance to like calm down and relax. It takes the tension off of the lumbar spine, the lower back, and you'll find that you can relax a little bit from doing this in the psoas, okay? Unfortunately, I don't have a lot more to offer you with regards to releasing the iliopsoas because it's such a hard muscle to work with, right? You'll see a lot of people out there. I'll link to a video that I made before on how to release it using a ball and a kettlebell that you're like digging in there. I'll link to that below. You're welcome to try that. I've come across conflicting evidence now that that's not very effective, but it is something that I wanted to put on your awareness. Okay, so that's basically what we're going to be able to do with the tools that we have access to address the tightness in the iliopsoas. All right, 3 is the rectus femoris. This is a really big hip flexor muscle. It runs basically right down the center of the thigh. Okay, it's one of the muscles that comprise the quadriceps. Yeah, like I said, it just runs right down the thigh, super easy to get with a foam roller, okay? So the way that you foam roll this, like I said, super easy. Put the front of your thigh right down on there and then just roll back and forth from just above the top of the knee all the way up to the hip. And make sure that the foam roller is touching right in the center of your thigh. That's how you know you're on that muscle. You're also hitting the sartorius muscle, which is another one of those, hip flexor-esque muscles that plays a role in hip flexion, even though it's not a big role. Okay, so that is basically how you would foam roll the rectus femoris. To stretch the rectus femoris is very similar to the TFL stretch. It's a little bit different though. Okay, so the easiest way to stretch the rectus femoris is to put a pad under your knee and then place your foot up on a bench or a bed or something like that, okay? And like I said, it's very similar. What you're gonna do is you're gonna squeeze that butt, squeeze the core, try to neutralize the pelvis, but instead of tilting to the side here like we did with the TFL, what you're gonna do is you're gonna try to maintain that flat back, like what I have right now. Notice I'm not doing this, okay? Back is flat. What you're gonna try to do here is sink back so that the heel touches the butt, okay? You're really going to feel this, really lighting the front of your thigh on fire, and that's the rectus femoris that's being stretched. Okay? So for this, you're going to hold that for 30 seconds. 30 seconds foam rolling each side, 30 seconds to a minute, 30 seconds to a minute of this as well, and that's how you get into the rectus femoris. Now the last muscle we're going to address is actually a group of muscles called the adductors. Okay? Hip adductors are basically your groin muscles. These muscles are responsible for taking your leg inwards towards midline. Some of these, like the pectineus, okay, in here, and some other ones in here actually aid in hip flexion as well, so they can become hip flexors in certain situations. Basically, this is how you do it. It's really easy to foam roll these. You basically put your foam roller, you line it up vertical with your body, stretch your leg out to the side, kind of come down onto both arms, and just roll that thing all the way up high into your groin. The pectineus is like really high up here, okay, so you really want to like spend some time in there, just like this, 30 seconds, okay? 30 seconds to a minute, as with all of these exercises. From there, we're gonna do something called a Cossack rock back, okay? This is not a static stretch, this is a dynamic stretch for the adductors, okay? So after you foam rolled both groin muscles, basically what you're gonna do, you're gonna start in this position, quadruped. You're gonna extend one leg out, okay? And then you're gonna rock back like this, okay? The goal is to not let your hips tuck underneath you, okay? So what you don't want to be doing, this kind of thing, okay? This is bad. This is how you should be doing it. Neutral spine, keep it neutral the whole time. Your foot might kind of like turn up a little bit, all right? But you're gonna do about 15 or so of these on each side, following the foam rolling. There you have it. Now, I want you to know that these are the 4 major muscles and groups of muscles that contribute to hip flexion, but there are other muscles that have certain fibers that actually contribute to hip flexion, okay? You don't have to worry about those too much. You want to focus on the major hip flexors, which is what we did today. I really hope that you learned a lot from today's video and what to do if you find yourself sitting all the time and having tight hip flexors, maybe some lower back pain to go along with that. If you did like this video, then don't forget to subscribe down here. Also, if you have tight hip flexors, then there's a likely chance that you also have something called an anterior pelvic tilt, okay? Anterior pelvic tilt is caused by tight hip flexors in conjunction with some other muscles being weak, certain other muscles being too tight as well as the hip flexors. Basically, the end result is the pelvis tilts forward, okay? Your butt sticks out and your lower back arches, okay? If that sounds like you, then what you need to do is get my anterior pelvic tilt workout, okay? This workout integrates things like stretching of the hip flexors, but it also integrates a lot of strengthening exercises that are perfect for you if you're somebody that has tight hip flexors, okay? A lot of glute strengthening exercises, a lot of core strengthening exercises. Basically, this workout is designed to help fix that anterior pelvic tilt, neutralize it, stretch out the hips, and make that back a little bit more flat so it's not arched as much, okay? So if you want to get that, all you have to do is click the first link in the description down below or the first link in the comment section down below. That will take you to my website. I'll ask you for your email. As soon as you enter in your email, I'll send you the workout within 5 minutes. If you're looking for another place to get the anterior pelvic tilt workout, then you can click this right here. That'll take you to the same spot on my website that those other links will. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do that. And if you're looking for more videos like this, more videos about anterior pelvic tilt, more videos on hip flexors, check out this. I think you'll like it. That's it for today. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.